Well, hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Williams, Senior Editor at MGMA and host of the MGMA Podcast Network. We are back with another MGMA Member Spotlight podcast, and I'll just say this one is a special one because we have an honored and special guest today, Steve Dickens. And in addition to Steve's career, I have a special announcement here. Steve has recently been named the recipient of the 2024 MGMA Lifetime Achievement Award. And it goes to a deserving person who has meant so much to MGMA over the years. Steve has over 30 years of experience in healthcare, a deep passion for mentoring the next generation of healthcare leaders. Steve's journey is nothing short of inspiring. Steve, I'm going to quit gushing here and welcome you back to the MGMA podcast.
Well, thank you, Daniel. I truly appreciate that very much, and everything you said was very kind. Thank you. I am flattered and honored.
All right. Well, I did mention that, Steve, you are receiving the 2024 MGMA Lifetime Achievement Award. You're actually going to receive that at our Leaders Conference here in Denver. Just speak to that a little bit. What does this award mean to you on a personal, professional level? Talk about that.
I am just beyond grateful and flattered. I have been so fortunate. I have had the incredibly good luck, good fortune, right place, right time, however you want to say it, whatever you want to say, to have met and worked with so many people through MGMA and who have mentored me, who've been so important to my career. And I've known so many of the recipients of this since my time in MGMA, and was fortunate enough to actually present it twice to two very deserving individuals. And so to be included in this group is really surreal, I think is the appropriate term. When I got the email, it was really more like an out-of-body experience. But, I it took me a while. I really just had to process that. But, I'm the one who should be saying thank you. I'm the one who should be presenting the award to MGMA. If nothing else, what this means to me is that maybe I've had the opportunity to impact a couple of people, but more than that, I'm just grateful for the chance to say thank you to the people who've made a difference to me and for what MGMA has done for me personally and professionally.
Well, thank you for that. Now, you have had a remarkable journey. And let's go back to the beginning here. You started out in a small town in Tennessee, and you have become a key figure in healthcare management. Talk about some of those origins there, where it really started for you and then progressed from there.
As I look back and think about the career, which, we've talked about before, this is not where I thought I would be 30 some odd years ago. Um, and, but it has just been an incredible journey. And everywhere that I've landed, every job that I've had, it has been through a connection. It has been through knowing someone. And as I look back on that, a lot of that had to do with being involved in professional associations and being willing to get out of my bubble. And when I think about the decisions, the important decisions, the ones that made the biggest difference are the ones where I took a chance.
Yeah.
Whether that was, okay, yeah, sure, I'll champion this project. I have no idea what this is, but okay, I'm willing to do it. Continuing my professional development, and, continuous learning is so important. And raising your hand and getting involved with people, I think continuing to try new things and continuing to be willing to learn and make mistakes. Goodness knows, I've certainly made my share of those along the way. But I really think that willingness is the key to confidence. I think it's the key to growth. And, I've suppose for better or worse, I've not been afraid to just put myself out there. And, I find most people are not willing to really do the work. They see what they do as a job. And for me, it has been a part of me. And it really has been a career. So, but believe it or not, it is amazing how far one can go just by showing up and keeping your word.
Yeah. So, in researching you for this interview, you've had a relationship with MGMA for more than 20 years. Talk about that. How did it start to begin with? And then what was maybe a turning point or a pivotal moment where you went, "Hey, I'm getting something out of this. I'm going to
Yeah.
stay with this MGMA group. This is working really well for me and for others."
Yeah. Well, I was really very lucky. The first 10 years of my career were on the hospital side.
Okay.
So, I worked with physicians. We had clinics and, had been involved with that. But as so often is the case, when one grows up on the hospital side of things, one tends to be more involved in hospital association activities. So MGMA wasn't really something that was on my radar. I was more involved with the home care hospital and those types of things. And realizing that I needed to, diversify, make a career move, it was time to leave the hospital. I went to work for a physician-owned group. And one of the first things that they said to me was, we want you to join MGMA. We
Mhm.
want you to expand your network because we believe there are connections there that will benefit us. And thank goodness for those doctors who said that. So I started Googling, and, we did have internet by then, so I was able to do that and start, okay, what is this MGMA stuff?
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to find that there was a local chapter within the area. And of course, there was a state chapter and a national chapter. So, I joined all of those and signed up to go to the local chapter meeting, which was my first opportunity. And I almost backed out. It was January, it was cold, it was wet, it was dreary, but I was like, okay, the doctors really want me to do this, so I'm going to do it. And I still remember exactly what I wore that day. I can tell you the suit, the tie, everything. And I got to the meeting, and the speaker that day was Tom Stearns. For anyone who knows, he's a past chair of ACMPE and a former recipient of this award as well.
Okay.
And, I think I was just kind of hooked from that day. So I started going to meetings. And I think the turning point was the chapter hosted a fall meeting every year. And the people who were the leaders of the chapter came to me and said, "Oh, we would like for you to introduce our keynote speaker today." Thought it was a little bit odd, but sure, I did. And I think that was when I started getting attention. So, they found a sucker. And next thing I knew, I was president of the local chapter, which
Right.
then got me at state meetings where they were doing leadership development with local chapter leaders. And one thing led to another. And then, another colleague called and said, "Hey, we've got an opening in the Financial Management Society. Can you be at this meeting?" And I just was really having a good time meeting all these people, and I was learning, and I had insight and was looking at things differently from the physician-owned side of things. And so it just all really kind of clicked and rolled right along.
You have put a lot into MGMA over this 20 years. Talk about what you've gotten back from it.
It has been one of the defining experiences in my life. And that's just it. Uh, Being a part of MGMA and having had the opportunities I've had, not only from a leadership perspective and getting to do all those cool things, but
Yeah.
meeting the people and being exposed to the people that I have been. And I think so many of our members don't understand the true depth of resources that are available through MGMA. And I had perhaps a more intimate knowledge of those than the average person. And there is no doubt in my mind that I would not be sitting where I am in the job that I am today had MGMA not provided those resources and that education and those connections to me. And so for me, it's just part of who I am. And and I have found that the more one gives, the more one gets.
Yeah.
And so, that experience just, in the people, and at this point in my career, a lot of it is about the people and about those relationships there. So I value those tremendously.
Yeah. Now, you were talking about some of the roles you've taken, leadership roles through different MGMA committees and programs. One of those, you were MGMA Chair, and you were chair at a really instrumental time during the company's almost 100-year history.
Yeah.
That was during the MGMA-ACMPE merger.
Mhm.
Talk about your role as chair and some of the highlights there that you might want to share with us.
Yeah. Well, it was a really exciting time. And the leaders who were on the MGMA and ACMP boards really were the definition of a leader. They were willing to put aside, okay, I'm ACMPE, I'm MGMA, and they had a vision of bringing the two organizations, even though they were, symbiotic anyway, but bringing them together into this one and really creating the synergy. And it would have been so easy for either group to say, hey, we're going to stay separate. But these people said, we need to merge. We need to do this. We need to reconstitute the board, knowing that that meant many of them were going to come off. And so for me to have the opportunity to be the first solo chair of the merged organizations as a result of their work was so exciting. And I really enjoyed getting to continue to do it. Um, there were some challenges that
Yeah.
year. Of course, we were still very early in the process, and there was a lot of communication, and the architects of the merger had laid out the perfect strategic plan and executed it and knew that communication and relationships were the key to it being successful. And so I found my role as a continuation of that. Little did I expect, though, that I was going to kind of, be doing it without a CEO. The um, most of the year we functioned without a CEO, so that ended up with me becoming the face of the organization,
Wow.
and traveling and representing us where traditionally the CEO would have done that, but it was so exciting to meet the different constituents of MGMA and ACMPE. And, there were some concerns that perhaps ACMPE was going to fall to the wayside. It wasn't going to be as important. And I think, now that we can see 10, 12 years down the road that certification and fellowship are alive and well.
Mhm.
They are still the respected credentials within our organization. And looking back on the year, it just seemed like there was always something. The host hotel for annual conference that year lost their franchise. So do we still go or do we change cities? And that was the year of the Ebola outbreak in Africa. And so people were freaked out about where they're going to fly. And people were calling and saying, I'm not sure that I can come to conference. And we're like, well, we're not even sure where conference is. And, the thing of it is that it all worked out. It all worked out, and here we are continuing on down the road, and we are just about to hit that 100-year anniversary.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so exciting. So I want to go back not 100 years, but to 2018. I had just joined MGMA. We had our conference in Boston, just a fantastic show. I was new to MGMA. I had never sat in on a session. And Craig Weberg, who puts together a lot of the content at these live events, said, "Hey, for your first foray, there's a workshop. It's going to be 3 hours, but there's this guy, Steve Dickens, former chair at MGMA, is going to lead a workshop on culture." And I sat there not think, not
Mhm.
knowing what to expect. And I'll tell you, Steve, it was incredible. Your energy, your connection with the audience. I wanted you to talk a little bit about what that means to you when you get in front of that MGMA audience and you're walking them through some of the principles, values, processes that you truly believe in. What's that like to connect with that MGMA audience in that way?
I had completely forgotten about that workshop.
I
But
had.
now that you say that, I do remember it on Sunday morning.
Yep.
I love a live audience. I love an interactive audience. There's enough narcissist in me to enjoy the showman aspect of it, and I don't mind saying that. But what I really enjoy is the opportunity to give somebody something. That is one of the rewarding things about my real job, my professional job, is
Hmm.
when you have the ability to solve a problem, or you see the light bulb go off, or you give somebody something that they can really use. You know, aside from speaking as much as I have over the years, I've also sat in a fair number of sessions at this point.
Hmm.
And the ones that resonate with me are the ones where they bring it down to a real level,
Yeah.
where I make notes, where there's something about this that I want to take away. And so when I am connecting with an audience, my goal is to, provide a little bit of entertainment if I can, but it is also to translate it to something that works in their everyday life. It shouldn't be difficult. And if you can build that rapport, build that energy with the audience, it feeds off itself. There is nothing worse than a presentation that falls flat. And there are a lot of reasons that it does. You don't feel well, you're uncomfortable, the AV isn't working, you just get off kilter, you've got an audience that really isn't interested, or you misjudged who your audience is. And I've had my share of those too, but there is absolutely nothing better than walking off the stage and just feeling like you gave them something.
Yeah.
Funny little joke. We call that unicorns at my house. I'll if it's something big, and I'll get the text message. Well, did you have unicorns today?
Yeah.
And sometimes I do, and sometimes you don't. But it is nice to connect to that audience, and of course it requires that you have a group of people who come willing to learn as well. And that is one of the lovely things about MGMA people. When they show up, they show up.
This is so true. They are looking for problems to be solved, to examine those challenges that they may be having in the practices.
Mhm.
And yeah, you might have forgotten that 2018 workshop, but I did not. I was going, wow, is everything this good at MGMA? And so you set the bar
Well,
very high. So I want to talk about your education as well. You were talking about continuous learning. It is so true throughout your career. But starting in that formal education, you're a lawyer by trade. I mean, you have a Juris Doctor and you have an MA in educational psychology and counseling education. Talk about how you've used that formal education in your career as well.
that master's in educational psychology, was intended to be the precursor to my PhD.
Okay.
And, I was going to end up at a university somewhere, and we see how that turned out. That one actually is probably very useful because of the psychology aspect of it.
Right. Right.
It's like, okay, let's try to figure out the dynamics here of who this is and what this situation is. So that one has really been very useful. The law degree was, a little bit later in the career. I had thought about it for a few years. It was obvious at that point that I was in healthcare, and and that was where I was going to be and where I was going to belong, and trying to figure out next steps in career development. And so making the decision to do that, and I think one of the best things about that is that it taught me to think in a different way.
Hmm.
And it also reinforced the value of thorough research. In law school, you're taught how to do legal research, and everything that you look to points to something else. And so you have to follow the trail until you get to the beginning of it. And it's kind of like, people who are using AI now. Okay, well, it's great that it generated this presentation or this memo or whatever it is for you, but you've got to check the sources. You've got to make sure it's accurate. And when you are, working with practices and you're working with, payers, okay, well, you've got to dig through the contract. What does it say when you're dealing with compliance issues? Well, what really is this regulation about and where did it come from and how does it cascade across the organization? So for me, every aspect of my education, both in the classroom and outside the classroom, because I've learned just as much outside the degrees as anywhere else, have reminded me that communication is so important. And everybody has a different perspective. Everybody comes from a different place. They come from the perspective of their experiences and what it is that they know. And there is value in all of that. And, I think degrees are very pretty. I don't know that they necessarily make you smarter. They make you more educated.
Yeah.
But it's really about the experience and what you do with it. And for me, given what I do now, they have open doors and, they provide, some level of credibility, but you got to be able to back it up.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's switch gears to what you're doing right now. We've been talking about your career with MGMA and the interactions you've had, but as you've said, you have a regular job outside of your work with MGMA. So you are Vice President of Medical Practice Services. Talk about your role, your organization, and what you see as your purpose there.
Well, I'm very fortunate that I work for an organization that is truly physician centric. We are still physician owned, we're still physician led, and my department exists solely to help physicians and practice executives with the business side of medicine. There, there is no ulterior motive but to make their lives better. And we provide it as part of their policy because we do believe it is so important. And we know that physicians have enough to deal with. They didn't go to school to be business people.
Right.
So if we can provide some assistance and relieve some of that anxiety there, we do believe that that is very valuable. And, my role in that is, okay, how do we continue to do that with the evolving healthcare models? We're seeing so many different payment models. We're seeing so many more compliance regulations. We see the burnout, the frustration, all of those things, and delving over into the risk aspect of it as well too. And helping physicians do what they need to do in a safe way and in a efficient way as well, and providing that positive patient experience is the ultimate goal and what we're working toward there. And we believe that if we can do that, then we can make, a difference in healthcare.
Yeah, one of the other things that you've done to make a difference, and I just learned this about you in reading about you before this interview, you've played a significant role in developing the Diversity Leadership Council and Practice University. Tell us about that. What is this program and what has been your role there?
Well, our marketing people give everything fabulous names. So, but with the events of the last few years, especially, aside from the increased focus on a need for diversity and inclusion, we've seen a lot of staffing changes and turnover. And that's brought a lot of new people into the business. It's caused a lot of frustration for those of us who've been here for a long time who are dealing with those things. And so what we've looked at in putting together our Practice University program is providing, a training ground of sorts that meets people where they are, from Practice Management 101 to, the nomenclature in healthcare. I think back, 30 years ago, I'm like, it's alphabet soup. What is all of this? What does it mean? And, nobody really writes that down anywhere.
Yeah.
And so we provide education along the continuum. We used to call it boot camp, and now it's Practice Management 101 is where we start. And then through our workshops and our symposium, we go through this intermediate level up to a more advanced level. And so we make that content available to practice executives and managers and supervisors in an attempt to meet them where they are and help them get to where it is that they want to be. And, we partner with a lot of the local and state MGMAs as well, too. And so that gives us an opportunity to provide that content and that education in those venues as well. As far as, involvement in diversity, I really, that's really something that other people have been much more a part of. But, it is something that is very important to me. I think that all people deserve respect. They all deserve courtesy, and the physical characteristics, the other characteristics, whether it's, religion or ethnicity or whatever it is that maybe doesn't make us any different as people, and I cannot grasp the concept of why those things cause the issues that they do. I really don't. So, the goal there is to broaden mindsets. And I do believe that if people can see someone else as just a person who's trying to make a living, who's trying to take care of their family, who's just trying to, get day to day, trying to find a little bit of happiness in life, that they would realize, okay, whatever characteristic it is about them that is different, they're still a person just the same as you are, with the same hopes and aspirations, dreams and fears.
Thank you for sharing that. Got a couple more questions before we sign off today. So the first one is, what would you say to those MGMA members who are listening to you right now? Some advice, because you have had this incredible journey through MGMA over the past 20 years, whether they want to one day be chair or serve on committees or just get the most out of that MGMA experience. What would you tell them?
You got to show up, you got to raise your hand, and you got to be willing to do the work. That's it. And you can't do it for the glory of it alone. And it's fine to have a goal. If you want to grow up and be board chair, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I would not trade my turn for anything in the world, but you've got to be willing to do what it takes. And so it's responsibilities first, it's fun second. Be flexible, be open-minded. You're going to encounter a lot of people who think very differently than you do. And so learn how to manage your emotional intelligence and have those conversations with people. Put a little bit of money in the relationship bank so that when you need to make a withdrawal that you can. Be honest. And, again, don't take yourself too seriously. Have a little bit of fun. But I would be cautious to guard your reputation and your character, because once you give those things away, they're very difficult to get back.
Final question, Steve. When you look back over your career, what is a particular project, accomplishment, interaction, experience, anything you want to share with us that really stands out and resonates with you?
That is probably the toughest question you've asked me. There have been so many. There have been so many experiences. I've had all the glory and I've had all the moments on the stage, and those were all really nice. And they are warm memories that you can wrap yourself up in. But the most important things have been the individual experiences and relationships, and the employees that I've worked with, the colleagues that I've worked with, where I've been able to help them in some way, where I've been able to, whether it was as a mentor or whether it was as their actual boss, see the growth in them, see the development in them. And, those are the proudest moments when you realize you've helped somebody move along and maybe given them a little confidence in themselves that they didn't know that they had. When you see them achieve something, that's the reward.
Yeah. Well, Steve, that is going to do it. So thank you and congratulations for being the 2024 MGMA Lifetime Achievement Award recipient.
Thank you. Thank you again, Daniel. And thank you to MGMA and all the folks that made this possible. Again, there are so many other people out there whose turn should have come first, but I am grateful and truly humbled.
Thank you again, Steve. And I want to thank all of you for listening to the MGMA Podcast Network. And if you are interested in learning more about Steve, his journey, and the award opportunities out there at MGMA, I'll provide links in the episode show notes. So until then, thank you for being a podcast listener.